Hi, and welcome. Welcome back to another Onkruid video. Welcome back to another episode in our deep dive into the book The Gift of Therapy by Irvin Yalom. Tip 25. Blank screen, forget it, be real. Originally we thought that, and we as like therapists in general thought that the ideal therapeutic relationship would be a blank screen. A neutral, anonymous therapist functioning as this blank canvas for the client to adequately project their transference onto us. Transference kind of being the repetition of interpersonal problems that they also already experienced in previous relationships, most of the time with their parents throughout their lives. However, seeing that the role of the therapist kind of changed throughout the years, this idea of us having to be a blank slate also drastically changed. The therapist is not an archaeologist carefully dusting away layers of debris from the past to reveal it and then all of a sudden have the mystery solved and the symptoms cured. We use the past, we use it to understand what's happening in the here and now between client and therapist. What we really need, rather than a blank slate where the past can repeat itself and then all of a sudden salvation happens, is an authentic human interaction. When I think, and I think what a lot of people think about this blank slate way of being a therapist, we automatically associate it with Sigmund Freud, but from his own writings it appears that he was not such a blank slate at all. He was actually quite involved with his patients, observing them out of the therapy room, advising them to do certain things, and one of my favorite things I've ever heard about Freud, offering his clients cigars when they made beautiful insights, when they kind of struck gold in their own therapy. They got a cigar from Freud. Carl Rogers, the founder of the humanistic approach, founder of client-centered therapy, in which I'm a student, is kind of also associated with this blank slate form of being as a therapist, because his non-directive classic Rogerian approach was all about not being too present as your own person. You just had to reflect. You had to be there for the client, but not really be there in a function of yourself, really just as this therapeutic enigma, this therapeutic organism that was there, who you were as a person, not that important at all. Just smile and wave, boys, just smile and wave. He quickly discovered himself though that a real human dynamic interaction is way more helpful. And thinking about then, or that made me think about then, how he discovered authenticity to be the most important condition for therapeutic change, for example, later on in his life. One of Yalom's main points in all of his books, fiction and non-fiction, is that self-disclosure by the therapist breeds self-disclosure by his patients. You have to set an example. You have to be open and human and authentic in order for your client to be that as well. A group therapist can use this principle to kind of determine the group rules by being an example for everybody around him. If he wants openness, you better be open as a group therapist yourself. Yalom experimented a lot with group setups. What he found most effective was group therapy in 3 stages. First, the clients interact in a regular old encounter group therapy fashioned way for about an hour. Then 10 minutes of interaction about the session, but with kind of the observers and with the group therapists, the clients not in the picture anymore. And then 10 more minutes of a full recap with everybody involved, so clients able to react on what the observers of the group just said. When he was working with alcohol addiction in groups, he sent subjective session summaries to all members before the next group sessions in order to keep the therapeutic continuity alive, but also in order to share some of his subjective feelings about the group process. He made the group less daunting by formulating an agenda at the beginning of the meeting. He used video recordings together with his group and then these subjective summaries, and the subjective summaries seem to be the most beneficial to keep the group at ease, to make it less daunting for them to be there and to make it less probable that they would find their old patterns again, that they would hold on to their old patterns of drinking again. Introducing his own subjectivity, vulnerability, being anything but a blank slate, because in those session summaries he might have also admitted something about what he disliked about the previous session or his own mistakes. Yalom even experimented with something he called multiple therapy. Multiple therapists seeing one client. Student therapists that are still learning how to be a therapist, but also experienced therapists seeing that one client and then putting all of those caregivers in a group. Seeing how certain therapists were more open and how the client then reacted to that. Also observing what kind of questions the student therapists ask the experienced therapists regarding this patient. All very interesting sources of information, but not feasible in the real world because of a bunch of reasons. Time-bound reasons, financial reasons, like healthcare is not structured for us to just sit around in a circle and talk about our work because we won't get get paid for that, and I have to eat bread tomorrow morning to survive, you know? Yalom also talks about this tip and about his experimentation with openness in both his book Every Day Gets a Little Closer, but also in his book Lying on the Couch, or in Dutch, De Therapeut, which I read, and it's a great read, by the way. And it's about this psychoanalytical therapist kind of throwing everything he knows about therapy by the wayside and experimenting with total openness towards the client, really sharing everything that is going on inside of him regarding her, regarding the therapy, regarding what he feels, regarding transference, regarding counter-transference. But what he doesn't know is that the client that he's seeing at that point is not authentically there at all. She actually has some very, very bad intentions with him. And the moral of the story, according to Yalom, bit of a spoiler alert maybe, is that therapist authenticity can be of the most vital importance even in such dire circumstances. My own thoughts. This tip takes up a lot of space in the book. Like, it's about 7 pages long, whereas some of the other tips don't even cover an entire page. I've always seen Yalom as somebody who sees great importance in openness and thorough authenticity by the therapist, and this seems to be yet another confirmation of that idea. I've read this chapter before for my therapist education, so maybe I was unconsciously influenced by it, but I noticed that the thing about like sending subjective summaries about sessions is something I already do with some clients, especially with clients that sometimes enter the next session and then are like, what the hell are we working on? What are we talking about again? The thing still missing there is maybe some subjectivity. Not that I'm completely in a blank state kind of being towards them, but maybe I could include something of like, and this I found really important, or this seemed really helpful for me, or this seemed not so beneficial for your process, but I still want to share it, but maybe just throw this by the wayside. Like admitting that not everything I say is going to be helpful or perfect. I could never function as a therapist if I would have to remain a blank slate. I'm a human being of flesh and blood, you know, I'm there. I have feelings myself. I'm not a machine. I'm not a rock. I'm not just some canvas for them to paint on or to project on. I'm there in the room with them, with my own totality. If they mention something about a book I have read myself, I will tell them about my experience with reading the book. If they tell me something about how a piece of music has deeply changed them, I will definitely make sure to listen to that music so that we can talk about that together from my own subjective experience as well. If they ask me direct questions, I will probably answer them as long as I think they are beneficial towards their process. I won't shy away from being right into a bit myself because I'm expecting so much openness and honesty and realness and throwing away their boundaries for me that I kind of can be this stoic, rock solid, blank canvas in front of them. That won't work. And what especially will not work is me offering cigars to them for great insights, because I couldn't handle that smoke any single day of the week in my therapy room. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.